targeted. And then the Togwaggle Druid, which is definitely not something we see anymore. So Iambyseries Aggro Mage has been banned away, and this was to be anticipated. It is brought to target that Quest Rogue different. The even lock's the same, and that is what we'll see come out for Iambyseries, but the Druids and the Rogues are different types of decks. Iambyseries Druid is that, the Malagos, while Hunterace has the Togwaggle, and then Iambyseries has Odd Rogue against Quest Rogue for Hunterace. But let's jump into game one.
And that is quite a hand for this Druid.
Ooh, yes.
Yeah, it is going to be the even lock first up for Iambyseries, but Hunterace with the Wild Growth and Nourish, I feel like, of course, every Druid loves the ramp, but I don't think it's any more crucial than it is in this particular Togwaggle Druid, because as Malagos, sometimes you can go for maybe stalling out with some minions for a while, Lich King and things like that, but in the Togwaggle Druid, if you don't get that, or if your UI comes way too late, it's just so hard to put everything together to actually get to that fatigue win condition.
And on Iambyseries' side, he's looking for that early aggression and then dodging naturalizers. Effectively, if you can land a Mountain Giant or two and just get them going to the face without a response from the Druid, it doesn't really matter how much ramp they get. You're just putting so much pressure on. So as these opening hands have played out, it does seem like Iambyseries is a little bit behind just on draw so far, while Hunterace has hidden all of that ramp, but he does need to find something to ramp into.
And he has that one of Curse of Weakness in the list, and that's not a card that most people are familiar with in the meta because it's only ever played in niche cases and in conjunction with Mossy Horror. That's a very powerful combination, but I do think a lot of the time when I tried this in the list, it sat kind of dead in my hand, but I guess Iamby is planning to target something in particular.
Yeah, it's one of the things about tournament lineups, right? You can tech in these cards like Curse of Weakness. They just aren't that powerful on ladder.
Yeah. So Iamby fails to pick up either Mountain Giant or Twilight Drake, which feels quite bad. He might just be dropping this Vulgar Homunculus to make room in the hand for future taps. Not quite enough to stave off what... Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah,
no.
Hunterace is the nuts.
That is just about as good as Tyler's hand in that first or second game a while ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, this is not looking good for Iambyseries to start this one off. Hunterace has effectively pulled all the cards that he's needed. If you were designing your opening hand, this is pretty much what it would look like.
Yeah, so Hunterace can just hero power this turn and next turn go triple ramp rather with the Nourish into the Wild Growth. And in that case, he won't necessarily even need to coin the UI, but coining the Nourish right now doesn't really lead into anything. If he combines it with the Wild Growth, or even doesn't, it just allows you to get the Arcane Tyrant on board, which is why I think Hunterace is going for this. It challenges the Homunculus quite nicely.
Yeah, it gets that Tyrant on board, which is a great challenge to the Homunculus there, but it also does free up the mana to play other things or other draws next turn. So for example, if Malfurion was to be picked up, you can play that because you don't have to ramp anymore. So it does give him options in terms of freeing up mana on the following turn.
So the draw for Iambyseries is still quite lackluster. He might just drop a Shroom Brewer here, and I think we saw from Orange quite recently just healing a minion instead of the face here, really valuing getting the activation on Hooked Reaver more than anything. And Hunterace, wow, that is even more ramp for him.
That is. So, and you're right, the healing onto the minion. Actually, between Tyler and Saiyan in game one, we saw Saiyan heal the opponent's even lock face. So the even lock that he was against was further away from his Hooked Reaver, which is kind of one step above that minion. Hunterace here might be considering whether or not he should just be drawing off the Nourish.
It is a consideration, but if you get to UI immediately, a lot of the time you get other card draw, but then it is the second Nourish, so I wouldn't hate it that much.
I still think the Nourish makes a lot of sense here just for the mana. Getting that UI down as early as possible. It does allow the Arcane Tyrant and Swipe. And we talked about how can Iambyseries win this matchup. It's getting that minion presence early and just going to the face a lot. What we've seen from Hunterace is plays, yes, he's had great ramp, but he's also seeing plays that prevent that early damage as much as possible. And now going into, I think, turn 6 with 10 mana and UI in hand, that's great if you're a Druid.
That's pretty insane, the best you could possibly ask for. And Iambyseries, still no Giants or Twilight Drake, so he's going to tap to try and find one of those.
Oh, there we go.
It's great, and with the way Hunterace has been ramping so aggressively, I think Lambie can definitely put him on having UI, which means if you're playing UI this turn, you're not playing Naturalize at the very least, or vice versa.
Oh wow, the other Arcane Tyrant too. This is all just coming together for Hunterace. Now the good thing for Iambyseries is that he has that Skulking Geist in hand, which means he can follow up this Giant with the Skulking Geist and protect it from any Naturalizers. The downside is, now with 2 Arcane Tyrants and the UI 5/5 minion on the board, there's more than enough ways to deal with that Giant.
He looks close enough to dying on board that the Giant has to actually just trade.
Oh my, you're right.
Which never feels good. He can, however, play the activated Hooked Reaver here. It's just that the rest of the turn looks bad. Defile doesn't do anything here. Curse of Weakness can allow you to take a trade and save 2 health on the Giant. It feels awful.
That's not what you're looking for. And it's interesting from Iambyseries' perspective, you could play the Hooked Reaver, for example, and trade in, and that means you won't take any more damage to the face, but you aren't really threatening any way of winning. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him take a more aggressive line where something like Hooked Reaver does come down, but the Mountain Giant even just goes up top.
I do think he still has to take the trade here, just to respect things like the Naturalizers, which are still in the deck.
I think the problem with that is you lose regardless.
He actually is just going to save the health on the Giant, and this feels really terrible, but Hunterace's perfect opening hand has put Iambyseries under so much pressure, and also the fact that Lambie didn't draw into the Giants earlier on. Still not over yet, though. The Azalina and the Togwaggle are not in the hand yet, although it seems like that might not be the necessary win condition for Hunterace in this game.
Yes, the way that he's been able to put damage on Iambyseries, it does seem like just going to the face is a potential game plan here for him. Now, while you mentioned that he has missed on the key cards so far, he's continued to find more cycle in this lineup, so continuing to build that defense, has more cycle to go, bought himself a lot of time.
Shroomburr is a pretty good draw here, just so after this Hooked Reaver or Mountain Giant takes the trades onto the Ironwood Golems, they can heal up. I assume he'd rather heal the Taunt minion, which has staved off Hunterace's pressure for now. But it is another turn of not playing Geist.
I think with the way last turn played out, Iambyseries will have a good read that there's no Naturalize in hand for Hunterace.
It's just that Shroomburr is also really awkward with the mana because he doesn't have a cheap 2-drop minion to pair with it. And in that case, he might just drop the Geist here. There's also, I guess, a little consideration for going for the Dreadlord just to have your buffed Spellstone going onto a turn which could maybe be a 4/4.
Oh, that's really interesting. So while the Geist does remove those Naturalizers, those is a removal threat, the downside is that both those minions can be very easily traded off with the Arcane Tyrants on board. So you're losing 15 attack now, where if you play the Shroom Brewer, then you preserve, hopefully, 8. And I think this game's starting to get to the point where Iambyseries needs to take more aggressive, maybe riskier lines to give himself better odds of winning, because these more defensive plays just give Hunterace far too much time to assemble his own game plan.
Yeah, I think Lambie from this point, after these Tyrants trade into... Ooh, with the swipe, he can actually even just clear off the Giant and the Hooked Reaver with swipe and hero power. Push 8 to face with these Arcane Tyrants, and Hunterace has everything he needs. He has the board, he has Azalina in the hand, he has more armor to stall. This is looking really bad for a Singaporean player. But I do think that the line of play that Lambie was trying to go for is maybe clear off the board to land a safe Lich King, in which case Naturalize is already out of play because of the Skulking Geist. Unfortunately for him, that's not quite working out.
So the draw here is the other Spellstone. None of them are buffed.
Yeah.
So Lich King can come down here and Skulking Geist can get a nice little trade on the Tyrant.
Yeah, I do think that's what he is going to go for. Everything else is too awkward. By using things like Defile and Spellstone simply to clear off one Tyrant, you have to kill off your Geist as well, and he knows the Naturalizers are gone now, so
and he wants that Death Grip? Ooh, not there. Yeah, Death Grip and being able to steal your opponent's Togwaggle is a great win con.
Yeah, there's 3 relevant minions he could steal. aside from the Togwaggle, from Wesley's perspective, it's Azalina and Dream Petal Florist, because the Dream Petal not being able to land on either Azalina or the Tog means that they have to be played separately, outside of the Twig, of course, but there is Ooze in the list, I assume. Yes, for the even lock. But he knows that this Dream Petal coming down means that at least one minion will be cheapened, but the Lich King will still have another chance of pulling Death Grip and maybe messing with Hunterace's plans, but there's only 6 cards left.
Hunterace thinking here about whether or not he trades in. So the advantage of trading in is that the Lich King then can't take a value trade with the Skulking Geist next turn. The downside is you're making the trades for your opponent.
Close call. I think that you just hold because the guys can kill the other 4/4 anyway. Lambi here, no nice way of buffing his spell zones, because if the Dread Infernal comes down, he doesn't even have the mana to play one of them this turn, but at 6 health, it's a little bit scary. At least it's not Malagos Druid, but...
The interesting thing is, he knows that there's no way for Hunterace to kill him.
Yeah, especially having seen a swipe already.
Yeah, so double swipe would be one way, or UI if he was on 5. But being on 6, he's actually at this perfect life total where he is safe from everything at the moment. So the need to heal isn't really there.
Yeah.
But you can't drop any lower than the 6 you're on.
With trading off 1 minion, he does eliminate the possibility of Starfall for lethal, because that is still in the deck for Hunterace, I think. Along with Togwaggle and the second ultimate Infestation. I think that's all the minions drawn in the deck though, so if Death Grip does come from this Lich King, it will guaranteed pull out the Togwaggle unless it's the next draw for Hunterace.
I think Hunterace can get 3 draws next turn, so he actually
that's
plus
true.
natural, so he has only a 20% chance. Less than 20% chance.
Yeah, that's true. He's definitely going to just go for getting everything else from the deck, remove the Lich King cards as an out, or just do that. But he could just keep drawing this turn and then give Iambyseries just an empty deck to begin with.
Now, the one thing that can get Iambyseries over the line if it does go to fatigue is if he's already got Blood Reaver Gul'dan in hand and can put it down before it gets copied by Azalina. As we can see, though, it's in that bottom half of the deck. And he hasn't been able to tap as aggressively as he would have liked these last few turns.
And that's Hunterace's reasoning for going for the Togwaggle as early as now. Yeah, these draw cards don't actually matter that much if the junkies if what he gives Iambyseries is junk anyway. He hasn't seen Gul'dan yet, and because obviously it's turn 9, so if it's ever still in the deck, it's most likely to be, you know, it's more likely that you take the Gul'dan the earlier you play the Togwaggle. And he knows that's the only way he loses, right? If the Gul'dan comes down on curve. So he's just hoping to not see it from Lambi this turn. And I think Hunterace knows he's in the clear.
Yes, and it looks like Hunterace's hand does have enough to stabilize on the board. The only other way that Iambyseries can win from here is effectively if he has board so large already that Hunterace can't actually stabilize. But with Hunterace's life total, the cards that he's got in his hand, and a relatively even board, it should be enough for Hunterace to get the W.
Yeah. I'm trying to look for some kind of out here. It would definitely involve the Lich King staying alive. Now, Death Grip isn't nearly as good, but it can still produce some other valuable cards, maybe Frostmourne just for additional damage. An anti-magic shell board could be one way that he could maybe pull this back. I think the turn begins with removing these minions from Hunterace, though.
That's right, and the thing that looks natural is something like the Infernal with the Spellstone. While it does clear both minions off the board and leaves your Lich King alive, it puts it to 6, which means Hunterace's own Dreadfernal and Spellstone can just kill it straight back.
That's very true. And Iambyseries has perfect information on those cards, except for what will be drawn off the top here. And that is a Death Grip that is way too late.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate for Iambyseries. Especially with it not being able to steal back the card that he covets in that Blood Reaver Gul'dan.
Hunterace going for the Doom Pact here over the Infernal plus Spellstone to make sure he takes 0 damage from the minions of Iambyseries. Even if he burns the Gul'dan that's still in the deck, pretty sure he's still in a strong position, so just gonna go for that. Ooh,
Oh!
no Gul'dans for anyone.
Now, while the Gul'dan has been mulled, I don't think it actually makes a difference.
I think there's still a Malfurion left in Hunterace's old deck.
That's
so
true.
Lambi can actually take the... Yeah, what the heck?
There you go. I mean, there's just a 9-card difference in fatigue, so...
Yes, it is. So just the hero power probably won't get there, but I don't know. It helps him protect the minions that are remaining. But yeah, Hunterace has Hellfire and Defile, and Iambyseries knows this, so he has to create a board that's resilient to Hellfire and Defile, and that's not possible when like all the minions... Oh, I guess you can if all the minions are 5 health and above, so you just can't play the Shroom Brewer, right?
Yes.
But how's he clearing this Shroom Brewer from Hunterace?
I think you can wait until the next turn to follow it up. Even use something like the Hellfire, you just... Oh, this is aggressive. So this is saying he can't go to fatigue. Yeah, he has to keep pushing on board.
Yeah. Oh. Wait,
wow.
Whose deck is whose? Who's the druid? who's the even lock? Okay, well, I guess that seems like a pretty clean play for Hunterace here. Lambi can put Hunterace one further into fatigue with that Death Grip, but just doesn't look like it's going to be enough here.
So Hunterace just thinking through the turn, but it does look like a very clean turn to get that Mossy Horror down. There aren't too many cards left on Iambyseries' side that have that 2 or less health. The one that he would be aware of having perfect information is, of course, the Spreading Plague.
Yeah.
But it's unlikely to be a card that actually gets enough done in this game. If Hunterace has a board that wide that a Spreading Plague actually becomes useful, it probably means that Iambyseries has lost.
Yeah, the remaining cards in the deck for Iambyseries are that UI, I think the second UI, and the Starfall, if I'm not mistaken. So second branching paths left to possibly buff a Spreading Plague board. The more I look at it, the more it looks like Hunterace is taking the W for the first game.
These are some of the most frustrating games to play on ladder when you're the even lock, because you know that you probably can't win, but you should just play it out anyway just to see, just to be sure.
What kind of masochists queue Togwaggle Druid on ladder? Oh my gosh, there was a time when it was really popular.
Yeah.
But not these days, thankfully.
Now, one thing that Iambyseries can consider is when he does swap decks, he can then use the Death Pact, do a Sacrificial Pact? Yes, I think it's called that, to effectively mill Hunterace's deck that he has closer to 0 as well. So if he can wait for a big board...
Oh, the Death Grip?
No. The one that clears the board and then
mills
your
Pact.
deck.
Yeah.
Doom Pact.
Okay, got it.
Death Pact, Sac Pact, Doom Pact. I got there in the end. All right. So if you King's Ransom, then Doom Pact with a much wider board than this, you can effectively mull Hunterace close to 0. So I would have actually liked to have seen that maybe be held on for longer. Try and find a Spreading Plague turn where it gets rid of more, and then you do this combo, and it removes many more cards from Hunterace and actually does let the fatigue plan be a thing.
Of course, Lambi wouldn't have known that UI was the last card, but it also coincidentally forces Hunterace to draw that UI. And he will, of course, use the Ransom on his turn, and Lambi can still maybe pull a minion left with Death Grip. I'm pretty sure there's still one left, but yeah, the difference in health and deck size is just insurmountable from here, and Hunterace has answers to whatever remaining minions there are.
He can Death Grip a Black Knight, I believe. That's kind of cool.
Sure.
And then pair it with the hero power, you build a board that way.
Yeah. Get Spellstone down.
Yeah, so just thinking, like, playing this back, I believe that the swap and then getting a really large Doom Pact would have been Iambyseries' best way of getting a win, and then trying to take it to fatigue.
Yeah.
Could also Death Grip, of course, to thin the deck further, but just not going to be the case.
There's no way of telling if Hunterace would have played more minions anyway into that board, and Iambyseries really, I can't tell if he's trying to imagine the most creative lethal or win condition I've ever seen in Hearthstone, or just thinking about what to queue up next, and I would bet it is the second, because this game is pretty much over.
And the other thing is, when you do get to these complex endgames that players aren't familiar with solving, Hunterace is probably still actually actively thinking about the game, thinking about what Iambyseries can beat him with. Iambyseries, knowing that there really isn't a way for him to win here, can kind of just let Hunterace expend his mental energy by roping for 3, 4, 5 turns.
Sure.
Like, he knows he's lost, but Hunterace doesn't know that.
I hate the idea of trying to fatigue a sick guy, though. I mean, Hunterace is feeling better now. Yesterday was a bit more rough for him, but I think he's back in full force now, thanks to medicine from Marianne. Shout out. And
I think you're far too kind, Jay. I think if you can get that psychological edge in tournaments by playing a certain way, making certain facial expressions, you should absolutely do it.
All right.
Like, why would you stop trying to get extra percentage just by the cards in hand?
Looking at the remaining decks for Iambyseries as his mage was banned away, he still has to get a win with this even lock. It's very difficult for me to call it that looking at the board right now, as well as his own Malagos Druid and Odd Warrior. Of course, the Odd Rogue. Odd Warrior was banned for Hunterace, so that's not going to be in contention. And it might be that this Quest Rogue is still a struggle for Iambyseries to deal with, so overall it's not looking too good. Quest Rogue generally, if you have your Tempo Mage up, then you kind of feel like you're going to win at least something, but against Odd Rogue it's not that good for the Odd Rogue, even though on paper it looks like it should be.
I think most Quest Rogue players these days now think that it wins against everything with the exception of Aggro Mage. And some of them are still so staunch in their belief in Quest Rogue that they would say it wins that matchup too.
Man, who's fatiguing who, Jackson, in terms of mental energy?
I think Iambyseries has got me covered.
Yeah. He's the one fatiguing from the deck size, but he's got everybody else trying to figure out something that he's thinking about.
My turn is not. You win.
So there you go. Hunterace goes up 1-0 with this Togwaggle Druid, which is one of his favorite decks, I'm quite sure.
It is. I believe he's one of the people actually piloted it originally, and when Malagos Druid list was still getting formed, he was the one that was throwing in things like Togwaggle, saying, yeah, it even works in this list. Like, why wouldn't you have it? So it looks like they're getting ready to go into Game 2, and I believe they've both got the sign to get it started with them clicking away. And we'll see Iambyseries Odd Rogue coming out against the Even Lock.
Yeah, that is, I'd say, a pretty good cue. More favored against Even Lock, in my opinion, than it is against Quest Rogue. And he has the 1-drop and Cold Blood start, so if he can pick up another one, that would be really great. As for Hunterace, though, he has a Twilight Drake, and he is uncoined. Being able to coin out Twilight Drake as Even Lock is just one of the best ways you beat Odd Rogue. It's so difficult for them to deal with before they're able to play Vilespine, and then by then it could have gotten 2 or 3 value trades in already.
And looking at Hunterace's opening hand, this is a little bit of a reversal of fortunes from that Druid opener, because the Blood Reaver Gul'dan is not something that generally gets played in this matchup. It's usually decided before then. It's going to close that out, so you don't want to start with that in your opening hand. The Dread Infernal, more often than not, doesn't get much done. And Iambyseries has an opening that was so close to being what you're looking for.
Should have been more specific about the 1-drop I said. So any 1-drop but deckhand, because that opens up the board to a Defile, and you don't want to be wasting your Cold-Blooded minion just on that. So Lamby is instead just going to set up his dagger. It looks more enticing because of Henchclan Thug, but Hunterace has this really perfect early curve. Homunculus into Twilight Drake, into second Twilight Drake, and the Homunculus even buffs up a Spellstone. I don't think you can ask for a much better hand as Even Lock against Odd Rogue.
No, it really has worked out well. I mean, one thing you might ask for is some Defiles.
Okay.
But, you know, this is well above average for Hunterace in terms of opening hands here.
Good thing for Iambyseries is that he can finally develop this Cold Blood. It's going to delay the Henchclan for a bit, but you take this 5 damage on a protected minion when it's available to you. It is safe to Defile and Hellfire, and Hunterace, I think, is still going to be forced to coin out a Twilight Drake here, but there's a lot of damage being piled onto the board by our Singaporean player.
Bone Mare is not a great draw there, and you can see it on Hunterace's face. He knows that the Twilight Drake is the right move for this turn, but it doesn't feel good having to make it.
Yeah. Speaking about not feeling good, Iambyseries would love to be able to develop his dagger here, but it makes the rest of the turn really, really awkward. If he plays down just one of the 3 drops, it immediately gets eaten up by the Twilight Drake, but I think he might have to, just because if the Twilight Drake's trading into that, at least it's not removing the Divine Shield from Argent Squire and opening up something like Defile. But it is weak to Hellfire. He doesn't have a way of playing around Hellfire that I can see, though.
No, Hellfire will clear the board though, so Iambyseries in that world has to think about on turn 5, what are the 3 drops would he rather play from hand and have stick after a full clear. So Firefly comes out first, and it does open up the SI7 agent as an option, and that's what Iambyseries is pulling for, sending it all to the face, holding on to those higher value minions just in case that Hellfire comes down.
Yeah, I like this a lot actually, because if Hellfire does come out, the Twilight Drake has to kill itself by killing off the Argent Squire as well, and that deals another 3 damage to Hunterace's own face, and he has no choice. Just the Spellstone is not good enough here because it'll leave up 3 minions, assuming that the Twilight Drake and the Spellstone clear off the Argent Squire. He could go on 2 separate minions, but that's still leaving 2 up for Fungalmancer, so he's forced to do this.
So the full trade goes in. Iambyseries has 2 of those scalable 3 drops, as you said. And Hero Power plus 1 of those is going to be the play. He's going to be worried about the Spellstone, which is fully buffed in Hunterace's hands.
Yeah, he can't play around it though, just has to hope it isn't there, but Hunterace will be able to stabilize from here. But it does give Hunterace another, I mean, it is his entire turn, so it gives Iambyseries a window to develop something alongside this Vicious Fledgling.
The other thing that comes to mind is Leroy off the top would be lethal still.
Yes. Yeah, because the Code Blood's 10 and the dagger is for 2, and that's, I think, what Lamby is hoping to get if he sees the Spellstone comes down. As for Hunterace, he doesn't really have anything else to do.
Every other play he just loses. I mean,
Yeah.
you could tap for Hooked Reaver, which then trades evenly with board, and you're on 3.
I don't know if he's in a safe enough position to tap. I think the curve looks okay from here. You go Spellstone into Twilight Drake plus Sun Fury on the next turn, and then at the very least you can play a 6-drop and then taunt up with Bone Mare.
What does he pull? Oh, it's not the Leroy,
But it is 2 minions.
yeah, it's
which
not a
is really
bad turn
strong.
at all.
Yeah.
Especially with already 1 Hellfire coming out, this does create a pretty nice board for Lamby. Puts Hunterace down to 8, and
Second Spellstone.
Spellstone.
Put him back up to 11 alongside developing a Twilight Drake. At 11 though, it'll be 2 off for Iambyseries. This is really tense. I can hear the crowd chanting Leroy behind us.
So I think the turn's still Twilight Drake. It comes out with 7 health. So
You can go Twilight and Sun Fury and save the Spellstone.
yes, that's right. Well, you can never play the Spellstone in Twilight 1 turn anyway.
Yes.
So
Yes,
so Twilight Sun Fury Protector, it's on 7 life taunted up, and then Iambyseries is looking for a bunch of things that would actually get him into the lane. The Fungalmancer is good from there. Leroy's still good. The other Cold Blood's still good. Oh, the other Cold Blood's 1 off.
Vile Spine.
that's
just
it.
lethal.
Oh, no, it's not. He doesn't have...
Wait,
Oh,
he
it is, it
activated.
is,
Yeah,
it
yeah,
is, it
yeah.
is. Sorry, I thought he needed the dagger hit for some reason, and he does not.
And there you go. Iambyseries is going to tie it up 1-1. And that is quite a favorable for the odd rogue, gotta say. And he still has to get through on this quest rogue though, which would be kind of difficult with even lock on and Malagos Druid. But it has to be good.
That type of player where it doesn't really affect him that much. As long as he can still sit at the desk and play cards, he'll be as good as ever.
Only thing he was throwing up was W's. And look at this hand from Iambyseries with Wild Growth and Nourish. That's the kind of thing you need if you're hoping to beat Quest Rogue as Malagos Druid. Of course, the list these days for the Malagos Druid is packing things like Dream Petal Florist to make the matchup a lot better. And sometimes you can just get some crazy starts and then have your Floop Malagos or Twig activation to get the job done.
Now, we saw Hunterace's opening hand in the first series looking crazy, and Iambyseries has definitely drawn inspiration from that.
How are
because
they all
he's
doing this?
Also hit the double
Even
wild
Tyler.
growth. Yeah. It's just one of those days where everything's coming up Druid.
Yeah. Yes, it is indeed. And as for the Quest Rogue, though, it's not too much of a slouch itself. Hunterace did draw 2 copies of Southsea Deckhand and Zola, so he would technically only need 2 more bouncers or copy effects to actually get the quest done. But he's whiffed on card draw, things like Mimic Pod, which you really want to see in the early game, Elven Minstrel, so it might be a little bit dicey if he doesn't get bounce effects soon.
Iambyseries just pulling out the second Wild Growth and using the hero power to hit into Hunterace. We'll be playing that Nourish with Tyrant on the next turn.
Whoa.
And Hunterace,
oh my gosh, that's 4 ticks on Deckhand if he wants it.
So this is interesting with effectively not much else in hand. Do you want to kind of risk it on this deckhand? Do you think that'll be enough to get there, or do you need to wait a couple more turns to see your cards play out? And with Iambyseries' very fast start, Hunterace maybe thinking to himself, I actually can't wait that long. I need to start getting something going now.
I don't think this is a risk at all from Hunterace. It's just safest to go with the minion that you have most copies of. And I think the riskier thing would have been for him to wait and get greedy and try to finish the quest with a different minion. That would have given Iambyseries more time. And because Iambyseries drew into Starfall and the rest of his hand's pretty light, he's kind of forced to draw with the Nourished here. And Alexstrasza is very useful in the matchup, but might not be enough to get the job done if Hunterace gets those vicious scale hides.
Spellstone coming down here to get rid of the Zola. Will we see the Tyrant come out as well? Iambyseries is probably worried about the Sonya Shadow Dancer, which is why he's decided to hold on to the Tyrant.
Yeah, you don't want to use Moonfire on this because it's such a crucial amount of burst later on in the game. There is this thing you can do against Quest Rogue with Floop Malygos. It's just, with Dream Petal Florist, discount on Malygos, you can just do 30 damage straight up from hand without ever interacting with the board. With the 2 mana Malygos, swipe, Moonfire, Moonfire, and Quest Rogue can just straight up die to that if they haven't gotten armor from Valera or are stealthed by Valera.
How often do you think that happens?
I feel like more often than you'd think, because you need to do that sometimes just to get a win in this particular matchup, which relies a lot on Sonya to get the quest done, on things like Vicious Scale Hide to heal you up, and if there's no minions to rush into, then not necessarily is there a chance for the Quest Rogue to heal. That's quite far in the future though, and we can see for Iambyseries, he has the option to go for, I guess, a Starfall to clear this off, and you can play the Tyrant, but yeah, if he's worried about Sonya and he knows there's still a copy from Zola of the deckhand, it's not looking too great. But yeah, Hunterace is gonna have his quest done real soon.
If you're worried about Sonya, then Spreading Plague isn't a better turn than the Starfall, but I do feel like it's almost starting to get to the point for Iambyseries where he can't play around too much because his hand's going to get very full. He does need to start playing things out to make room for the combo pieces that he needs to assemble to win this game.
I think that Spreading Plague is a very key card to save for later on in the game in the stall. I learned a lot about this particular matchup by watching EU versus CN, where both RDU and Tice were piloting this deck many times against Quest Rogue, and they say it's not too bad at all if you just know how to stall it out. You use Plague when the Quest Rogue finally has their quest done, and you can stall out the board for quite a while, especially if they're not running Fan of Knives, which means each Scarab has to take 2 minion attacks to kill.
One thing to note is that Hunterace is running those Fan of Knives that you're talking about.
Yeah.
So double Fan of Knives, double Vanish, all great tools at getting rid of Spreading Plague once the quest is done. But of course, the downside of Vanish being that it slows you up a lot in the process, and that's exactly why you hold onto it, even if there is Fan of Knives around.
Yeah. You can see Iambyseries still has a bit of time because Hunterace hasn't picked up that last bounce or copy effect. He has stalled for himself, but Lambi, I think, is looking to focus more on card draw there, especially from what we saw of his use of branching paths. Picking up the burst this early is not too great, but he will have the option to maybe coin out Alexstrasza this turn to just get it out of hand.
Yeah, I think with hand size issues coming into play, I wouldn't mind seeing that, but it looks like we might see Spreading Plague. Is he going to commit the Tyrants to the board? Looks like he won't. Nope, he's reaching for them good. I can't see any reason why he wouldn't. I mean, if Vanish comes out, you lose one.
But I think that being that they are protected by taunts from potentially, or at least the fact that the taunts exist already, and if you think that Hunterace will complete the quest on South Sea Deckhand, they'll die anyway if there's a Sonya. I do like just going in with these now.
So at this point, Iambyseries is going to get the great news that Sonya has not hit the hand, and Hunterace is shaking his head because he knows there's lots of cards that would really help him in this situation. The Vanishes would finish it, Elven Minstrel, Mimic Pod, and Fan of Knives would all get him deeper into the deck. Shadow Steps, he's got 2 of those being run. All these things that would help finish the quest are just not being hit at the moment. And so as you can see, 2 out of 5, 2 in hand on the South Sea Deckhands, just 1 bounce effect is all that's required here, and it's just missing over and over again.
I was going to say, if Hunterace doesn't go for this Giggling Inventor, just the Alex coming onto the board was extremely threatening for him there already, as after the Wax Elementals killed by the Scarabs, the Tyrants could actually just push face for 8 and possibly put Hunterace down to 7 health.
This is still a really dangerous position. That Starfall is going to get a lot of work done.
It is extremely powerful here. It can even be coupled with Swipe, although I think you want to be saving that. I think just the Hero Power and Hero Power trade in the Scarab and Starfall, the rest of the minions push face for 8 is quite decent.
It is. The only thing that does feel a little bit awkward about this if you're sitting in Iambyseries shoes is you're not actually developing much more on the board yourself, you're just answering the Quest Rogues board. But anytime you can get rid of a Giggling Inventor before it hits that 4-4 crazy state is fantastic.
Yes. Hunterace, quite frankly, needs to draw the Vanish. If he gets Sonya this turn, there's no way to answer all of the board. He can survive for a while, though.
I think Sonya this turn's still enough, because even if Alexstrasza comes down and 8's pushed, then he's left on 7. He then has Vicious Scalehides to follow up with the quest.
Sure. Mimic Pod.
So this is finally the draws coming out, but it might be too little too late. Let's see what Mimic Pod hits here.
Oh
the Elven
no,
Minstrels.
that's so unfortunate.
That's a really poor draw.
He's forced to freeze one of these 4/4s, I think. You might even develop a Scale Hide behind it just to put fodder in the way for Lamby to deal with.
I think holding on to the Vicious Scalehide is right, because he knows he's going to need to get all that health back at some point. And this is what differentiates really good Quest Rogue plays in my mind. They know when to actually put those minions on the board and not maximize value versus when do they need to hold on to them and use them post-quest completion.
Alexstrasza looking real strong here. It's just a matter of whether Iambyseries wants to coin out, I guess, a Hero Power also to deal with these 2 minions. I don't imagine he wants to be using Moonfire, either of them, just because with Malygos they represent so much more damage. Coining out Hero Power also creates more hand space for UI later on, which gets him closer to that Malygos.
I really like the coin Hero Power, and I think getting rid of that Glacial Shard is spot on, because the last thing you want to do is see that get bounced a bunch of times and freeze up your board as well.
So this is going to clear absolutely everything.
And
that's completion, but too late.
Yeah, that's just going to be it. So it takes 4 mana to complete the quest, then you can play the quest, but no heal off the back of that.
Yeah, all you can do is get rid of the 1/3.
So the Elven Minstrels can't do anything interesting, because you need to be able to find prep, basically. Prep and Vanish still.
Which are not,
just can't be done by Elven Minstrels, so you could
minions, unfortunately.
You can hit the Novice Engineer, but the Novice Engineers won't actually cycle enough to get you there.
He is 1 mana short of going 1-drop Elven and Giggling, unfortunately. Giggling, from his perspective, might have been able to give him more time there, but that's just not going to get the job done. I have to say that's one of the worst quest rogue draws I've seen in quite a while.
And it is unfortunately one of those things that can just happen. And it was the downside, I believe, of committing to the South Sea Deckhand so early, that you can get to these game states where it just looks awful.
So there you go, Iambyseries up 2-1, and he took an unfavorable matchup on top of that, so now he just has to get the win with his even lock, either against. That's convenient to them and show that, you know, if I just had the ability to go where you were, I could beat you too.
So Hunterace now leaning back in the chair. It's the first time we haven't seen him slumped over, basically falling asleep on the keyboard. I don't know if that means he's switched on and ready to roll, or if it means that he's rattled, taking that new stance, laying back in the chair like that.
I think it just means that his arms hurt. I don't know. He just wants to lean back instead of leaning on them. Who knows, but it is going to be quite tough from him from here on out. Yes, he has one favorable remaining, but he did lose a favorable a while ago, and even if he wins that, he needs to win a mirror on top of it. And I kind of want to look at the differences in the even lock lists to see what kind of techs could make those few percentage points difference, which are often so crucial. And as we saw a while ago, that Iambyseries has this curse of weakness, which I don't feel is particularly effective in the matchup. Then again, it allows you to take value trades with your giant onto their giant.
I think the difference in the list is the Black Knight as well. So Iambyseries is running Black Knight, where Hunterace is running the newer version, which has a Bone Mare. But we won't see that matchup to begin with. We are going to see the Even Lock against the Quest Rogue. And it is a matchup that is quite favored for the Quest Rogue.
Yeah, I would agree. Even Lock takes a while to get going. On coin, though, they can put down Giants and Twilight Drakes really early. But as you mentioned a while ago, it's a deck that likes to put down singular big threats. And those are very easily dealt with by freeze effects from the Quest Rogue, or putting down those annoying Taunt with Divine Shield minions they have. And the card Vanish is especially difficult for Even Lock to deal with.
That's right, and with that lack of burst, it just struggles to find ways to get the finish on Rogue. And as a direct opposite of last game, Hunterace has been able to find a lot of that draw, finding some of those bounce effects now as well. Let's see if he decides to pull the Novice Engineer back here, or if he's going to try and complete the quest on a better minion, such as, for example, the Glacial Shard if it does show up.
Yeah. I think it's a decent minion to just go for a Shadow Step on. He has this nice coin Elven Minstrel for the next turn to keep the card draw going. Fortunately for Iambyseries, though, he did pick up two cost minions, so he can sort of hit a curve to be more aggressive with. With the pickup of Mountain Giant, maybe he holds back, but I kind of like just going for this now. The Giant might not even necessarily have the time to come onto the board.
It's exactly what you're talking about, Gia, with the single big threats being the thing that Quest Rogue can deal with to some extent with that stall. Being able to build that wider board and then put down the Twilight Drake, spreading your attack, does give you more ability to combat and push that pressure earlier than you would otherwise have. And the Glacial Shard comes into hand with a Zola that can bounce it back on the following turn as well. That is looking pretty good if you're in Hunterace's shoes.
Yeah. Iambyseries does have this Twilight Drake on curve, though. Not a turn 5 play yet, but he still has a chance to draw it. And I'd like to see all of this pushed face. Most of the time, Elven Minstrel is not a minion that you're scared of returning to the hand.
Not really, and he also knows that Novice Engineer is already being bounced, so there's likely to be a fair bit of card draw in hand. I don't think that you can trade into this. You just let Hunterace make that trade and push everything to the face.
He is hesitating, though, this Beetle.
He is thinking about it.
The other thing about trading in the Beetle is that should the time come when your Hooked Reaver comes into the hand, getting that extra armor this early is a little bit of a detriment, so not a big fan of that play, but he definitely has his reasons. Hunterace has Novice and Zola for this turn to keep the quest going. He can also expend, I guess, maybe a Wax Elemental to... Alright, he'd rather go for some type of board clear.
So the deckhand will come out there and take down the Ooze, and he'll put behind it the Wax Elemental, which will, of course, handle that Twilight Drake very efficiently. Iambyseries' hand now looking a little bit awkward, as he hasn't got any four cost minions to follow this up.
That's just a straight up pass, because the next turn, like, you don't want to Spellstone this. The next turn, you could easily play Black Knight to clear it off. If you don't want to play Black Knight next turn, that's an argument for using Defile or Spellstone to clear this off.
I think Defile is interesting, but it can be very useful, especially clearing post-quest. It is one of the things that you can use with Hellfire to then actually re-clear the board. But from Iambyseries' perspective, he has to consider, if the game goes that state, will I actually get the win anyway, or do I need to push more pressure now? And he may be considering the fact that he wants Mountain Giant down next turn. If he wants Mountain Giant down next turn, then should the Defile be played rather than the Black Knight?
Feels really bad to straight up pass the turn. There are no Shroom Brewers, no Hooked Reavers even, which you would play there in that instance. But Hunterace now is looking in a really strong position. Picks up even a Mimic Pod, but I assume he'll want to be Zola-ing this Novice Engineer, just figuring out what to do with the rest of his turn. If he freezes the Twilight Drake, though, it's a board that's very weak to Defile, even without the freeze, actually.
That's the thing with Quest Rogue. Almost every board pre-quest completion is weak to Defile.
Yes.
There is no strong boards.
The other thing it's weak to is Dread Inferno as well.
Very much so, yes, yes. I mean, the Wax Elemental still gets to clean up the 4 attack again, which is probably not a bad outcome if you're in Hunterace's shoes. But none of these turns are looking too great, and his hand is a little bit clunky. But with all this cycle, he should be able to get through it. Looks like a strong enough hand to get the win from here, especially with Iambyseries missing 4-drop last turn.
So it looks like Hunterace is just going to re-dagger this turn, and this gives Iambyseries the opportunity to push some damage to the face. However, if he uses either the Defile or Hellfire to deal with this, it's not dealing with the rest of the... It's not allowing you to develop a minion alongside it. And
Well,
oh, you can do
Mountain
Giant...
Dome,
yeah, sure.
Giant Defile is what
Yeah.
I really like here, because you need to have that point in the game where you just start turning aggressive and pushing damage to face. And missing out on another turn here, just there's no way that's going to be the case. I think you have to start going for it.
Yeah, you can even fit in the tap in that case, and it will put 3 damage on your Giant and Drake, but it's definitely worth it to get that 4 damage and the extra minion onto the board.
So not going for the tap there and just hitting Mountain Giant Defile instead. Interesting not to go for the tap.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a reason as well.
Maybe a slight oversight on Iambyseries' behalf. Hunterace, we can see, has pulled the Vanish, and that is one of those cards that is just so useful to Rogue in this matchup.
Having just seen the Defile, I feel like Hunterace would be inclined to try and stall with Giggling Inventor this turn. He really wants a bounce as soon as possible for this Novice Engineer, so I can also see something like drawing with Mimic Pod and maybe freezing off the Giant for a turn. Oh, freeze and Giggling. So, sure, this is really all in against him not having the second Defile.
Or really any other way to deal with the Giggling and the Glacial Shard. And there are lots of ways for Iambyseries to get that damage through. I mean, sure, things like Hellfire aren't as attractive, but like you can't really leave Giggling Inventor up, and leaving Glacial Shard up when it's such a huge card is also probably not a great idea.
Hunterace has been making a lot of stressed expressions, just shaking his head, kind of squinting a lot, and I feel like he's... I don't know if he's that happy with his play or just really stressed, but he really needs to keep his focus if he wants to take this one.
So the Dreaded Infernal is great here. I don't think Hellfire is ever the play you want to make, so Dread Infernal I would expect it coming down, building that bigger board, clearing off all but one of the Annoyatrons. And Iambyseries is looking pretty good.
Yeah, he's looking in a very strong position here in another matchup, which is supposed to be favorable for the Quest Rogue. Of course, all that can change in the blink of an eye. Everything can vanish. All the hard work you put in. With the draw of preparation, things could change everything for Hunterace.
Yeah, this does make it a little bit tricky for him now, because traditionally when you vanish, you do want to be comboing it with the minions that you're trying to bounce back to your hand over and over again.
Yes.
And with no prep, as you alluded to, we can't really do that. You can play the Stone Task Spore and vanish with that, but it looks like he's found an alternate line here.
Yeah.
The Fan of Knives coming out instead.
Double Fan and the Boar, and the Annoyatron can at least clear 2 minions. The Giant and the Twilight Drake, it leaves up still 1 threatening minion, but it does allow him to stall the board and, more importantly, get card draw to actually finish this quest. He didn't want to commit the Novice Engineer because that's the minion that needs to be bounced back to the hand if the quest is completed.
So Iambyseries ideally would have the Lich King to play on this turn and doesn't hit it, but will be able to put down a Mountain Giant, that's nice.
Yeah. It's always nice. Can still tap.
Yep. Hopefully hits a 2-drop here as well to pair with it. And
Wow.
he does.
Perfect for him there. Even the added bonus of fully upgrading the Spellstone. Not that it usually matters too much in this matchup. Like,
No.
5 equals 7 when you're dealing with 4 minions.
Exactly.
4 health minions. Oh! Okay, so the Novice...
The Novice can get played twice here.
Yes.
What's the quest on? Let's find out. It's on 3.
Minions played in 1 turn as even lock is a blessing. That hardly ever happens. outside of, you know, summoning them with Gul'dan. But Hunterace will have his quest completion. Except the minions won't have charge. Because he goes Novice, Youthful Novice, and then he can prep quest. But he has this other prep, so it's going to start with Mimic Pod.
He might actually have to hit the other prep here. Oh no, that's enough. Wax Elemental's now enough to keep him in this. Because even if he completed the quests, being on 14 life just meant that he died on board. And even if he didn't die on board, you're worried about other damage from hand.
Yeah.
So the Wax Elementals are exactly the tool he needs to be able to prevent that damage.
And we see Black Knight is in the hand for Iambyseries to deal with the Wax Elemental. So, yeah, Hunterace.
So the interesting thing, though, I think, is even if quest is completed and both Wax Elementals are down, Iambyseries can just trade in with the 2 minions into the Divine Shields, double Hellfire, and get the lethal with Mountain Giant. So this is looking really good for Iambyseries.
And I think he only has the mana to play 1 Wax Elemental after the quest is completed. So I do think we have our winner for this event, and Hunterace is visibly really stressed here. I don't know if he had any other outs, maybe trying to look for Giggling, but he didn't really have the mana. So...
And that's just going to be it. Iambyseries, the smile is on his face. We're going to hear the crowd go up here in a second. As that...
Is it?
Yeah, you just double Hellfire with the Mountain Giant to face. There's not much thinking.
Yes, right, because even if it kills your 2-4 and 4-4, that deals 6 with the Hellfires, but... okay.
This works as well. You just trade the Vulgar Homunculus in Hellfire.
Yes,
and then
this
push
is more optimal even if you want extra damage, but there you go.
The crowd is loving it. That's the locals here cheering for the Singaporean Iambyseries, who upsets Hunterace 3-1, and he'll be progressing to our top 8 tomorrow. And look at him.